been a hot minute, but we're back from mid-semester break. And today was the first day back. And it was a big day back. It's like paranoid last night and this morning. Triple mega checking the timetable like, yeah, I have school today, right? Yeah, definitely. And on the bus, I'm like, there's like no other students on the bus. I have school today, right? But yes, I did have school today. And school started out with 9 o'clock, just before class starts. I learned that I have a piece of assessment due today that I didn't realize was due today. Didn't touch it all over the break because I'm like, we don't have to do work over the break, right? Yeah, we had to do work over the break. So guess who didn't do work over the break? Textiles class, starting a new subject, which is about embellishing garments. So doing things like bleaching or dyeing, embroidery, modifying, all sorts of things, like whatever you can do to mess with an already completed garment to change it up. That's what we're looking at. So we're gonna spend the term trying different techniques, designing our own modified garment and completing that. So just kind of going over everything today. And it was nice seeing the textiles teacher because she's so lovely, so everyone missed her. And one of the first things she showed us today, because she was really excited about the new Balenciaga collection. But apparently a couple days ago, Balenciaga did like an official collab with The Simpsons. Like, Balenciaga is an unusual brand because they simultaneously do like avant-garde ball gowns and then also drip. So they did a 10-minute Simpsons episode, which was like Homer trying to get a Balenciaga overpriced gift for Marge for her birthday to make her happy. But it just ended up being Mr. Balenciaga taking the entire town of Springfield to model his actual in real life collection. Animated in the show. This filter makes my head look like an egg. I'm actually really excited for my textiles class. It also helps that Jennifer is so lovely and enthusiastic about everything that we do in that class. Last unit was on, like understanding fibers and textiles in general, but now we're going to learn about how to fuck with them. So first week is going to be bleaching and dyeing, different methods and stuff, shibori dyeing, paint on versus dip bleaching, all sorts of stuff. We've got to bring in some stuff we want to bleach and dye, so I have a old denim shirt that I was going to donate, and I'm going to make it cool and then maybe donate it. I'm going to dye that one, and then I have a plain shirt of my partner's that he doesn't wear because it's plain, so we're going to make it not plain by bleaching some cool patterns on it. And maybe he'll wear it now. Or not. So that's really exciting. We're going to learn different techniques every week and then do a design inspired by the techniques that we learn. And we're going to either modify the apron that we made in sewing class, which I don't think I'm going to do, or we can modify donated clothes. Like there was like a bunch of donated clothes in the class and we could like pick and choose from them. So I picked up a bunch of white stuff because if you start with white, you can really fuck it up. We need to pick a theme and a motive and like a mood board, like an inspiration, and then fuck up these clothes and embellish them and make them into something new. So I'm thinking, because I rewatched it recently, I'm gonna go like Mad Max, like we're gonna make it like a wasteland survivor kind of clothes and modify these garments together to create something that's like protective but also clearly affected by the elements, and like maintained over time with like whatever you have and everything. So gonna do rusting, gonna do burning, probably some dyes, definitely some borrow patchwork. I have some fabric samples from a curtain manufacturer that closed down, and they just have like, when you go to a curtain manufacturer or an upholstery place, they have these books of their fabric, so you can be like, oh, you can have this couch, but you can have it in this color, or this color, or this color. And they just had these books, like it was like $2 for a whole book worth of fabric samples, and I can patchwork the hell out of this shit. And it's better than going in landfill, which is cool. So I'm very excited for that class. I'll share each week how we go with the techniques like the bleaching and the dyeing and stuff. I'll show you next week what I ended up doing. I think I already talked about the disaster that was my drawing class and how I didn't know there was an assignment due. Well, I mentioned it. But yes, so last semester or last term, I thought that the design brief was due alongside all of the other design elements, but apparently it wasn't. So I spent more time making the rest of my portfolio beautiful and updating the details and improving the work I had in it. Because the teacher said, oh, so it's going to be due when you get back. And the first thing we're going to do when you get back is going to do the costing sheet, so I can show you how to do that. I'm like, okay, cool. So I didn't physically go and check what the actual due date was because I was like, oh yeah, in my brain it's next term. And because the study guide uploaded on the website was incorrect because of all of the lockdowns breaking up what week is due what and whatever. So I'm like, oh, okay, so it's not actually due week 10, which I thought was the last week of last semester. But it wasn't. Week 10 was the one that just went. And week 10 was when it was due. So I did what I could in the 2 hours of class, shaking and panicking, and submitted what I had. So now I have to resubmit next week with the final piece and pray that I'm ticking all the boxes because obviously I don't get the feedback, so I don't know what the other bits, if I fuck them up. And I thought I was so on top of everything. I'm like with my calendars and my Google Docs, and I'm like super organized, more than I've ever been in high school or uni, and I still miss a whole due date. Yeah, let's not do that again. CAD class, awesome though. We are finally doing stuff in Illustrator instead of drawing it by hand. And I could do computers. I can't do hand drawing, but I can do computer. Because it's not like sketching or anything on a computer. It's vector drawing, so it's a bunch of lines and maths. And the software is very similar to software I've used in the past, so I managed to figure out a lot of what we had to do in the class. We did some shapes with the pen tool, and we did a singlet, which was way faster for me to do on the computer than it was by hand. Which I think it's different for different people, you know, depending on their drawing background or computer knowledge and stuff. But I'm glad we're doing stuff on the computers. My work will now look a lot neater, and I can produce it a lot faster as well, because I can sketch by hand, and then I can do final nice pieces on the computer, which is cool. So we're going to learn new things each week for that one, and then upload them into all one big portfolio, which I will get to show you. If there's more things you want to see, I know I do a lot of talking in these videos, but if there's actually something you want to see or want me to show you, I don't know how much I'm able to record at school. I'm going to have to find that out. But let me know, and I can show you some other stuff, some more things to have a look at and think about. Yeah, get involved with. Share this educational journey with me. So on Thursday, that's the sewing class. I got into class and was like, oh, you didn't bring your fabric. I'm like, didn't know I was supposed to bring fabric for something. So I was bringing fabric for our A-line skirts. Another one that we did in the trade drawing class. Yeah, didn't know I was supposed to bring that because I had to leave early the week before, like before the break, and that's apparently when she said to tell everyone to bring their fabric. So I didn't bring my fabric. I was like, I could go home and get it. I'm just gonna be like an hour though, because I have to. It's like a 25-minute walk each way. Anyway, we didn't end up needing to bring the fabric for reasons I will disclose shortly. Instead, we did a bunch of zips. And making zips actually look nice, because I've tried to do zips before and trying to follow the instructions on zips. I've literally had a cosplay where I made a pleated skirt, terribly pleated by the way, and literally had the zip like stuck on the outside of the fabric because I couldn't get it. It just needed to close the damn thing. Just top stitch it down. It's fine. It'll be covered by the jacket over the top of it. But now we can do beautiful zips. Look at this beautiful lap zip, and so neat. The lap bit is this little flat bit. I guess you would consider that a fly, but it's not like super covered. Just a little bit covered. And we learned 2 ways to do it. The first way, which is complicated but the neatest way, and the second way, which is like easier but like not as don't know, like I managed to get it to look pretty neat. But I made sure I wrote down the instructions like on it, so if I need to do it later, I can come back and look at my sample book and be like, oh, so I'm supposed to line up the teeth to the seam that I've already made in the fabric, and then pin stitch that down, and then lock it across the bottom and fold over the lap, and yeah. That is beautiful. And there is also this zip, which has a facing on the other side. So you would put this in a skirt, right? So that it's neatly contained on either side, and you don't have like the zip exposed on the inside of like the skirt or whatever. So we did this in 3 parts as a way to like remember how to do it when we come back and look at our reference. So like this is the facing, and you want to like stitch the back of the zip to the back of the facing, and you need to have like some seam allowance there. So that's going to end up being on the inside of the fabric. You then need to attach the front, which was a mess, the front part to the, like, the top edge here of the front of the zip, and then fold it over and understitch the inside so it stays nice. But still, it's not attached yet. That's the 3rd step, attaching it. I don't know if this makes sense. It makes sense to me now that I've actually done it, and I guess I write all these notes so that they end up making sense to me, right? So, fuck all y'all. For real though, if someone does have questions about this stuff, I'm still learning, but like I'm really excited to talk about it, and I can give you like my insight, because the thing with sewing is that like there isn't one way to do anything. There's like 50,000 different ways I could have learned how to like sew in those zips. And that is just one way, so I'm gonna remember that one way, and maybe there'll be a different way that's gonna be more appropriate to a different garment or a method that I'm trying to employ. But yeah, if people have questions, ask away. If I don't know the answer, I can go ask my teachers for you. They really like being asked questions. So because I remember everything out of order as well. Another thing in sewing class. So we'd finished all the zips by about 2:45, and we're supposed to have a break at 3 to 3:30, and then the rest of the class goes till 5:30, but I always have to leave at 5 because of work. I'm like, oh, okay, what are we going to do in the later half of the class? She's like, okay, so 2:45, why don't you just have a 15-minute break, and then we'll power straight through. I'm like, cool, that works for me. Everybody else consented to it. We'll just have a short break. I'm like, what are we going to do in the second half? She wasn't really talking about what we're going to do. The second half was like a waste of time. I did not need to be there. I think like the energy of the room was just so low by that point, from like you just spend all day sewing, and it's really draining, especially if you're making mistakes, and having to redo stuff. It could be really demoralizing as well. So it gets to this like last part of the day, and I know she's trying really hard. She's trying to get everybody excited, and like no one's having it, and she's like getting excited about something she found out that was wrong with the fabric, so she can show us a way to like fix it. I don't know. I literally said, I'm glad someone's having fun. And like, yeah, I don't know. I think we started laying out fabric so we could cut out our A-line skirts, but not everyone brought fabric, myself included. And there was only one pattern between everyone, and there was miscommunication about whether or not we were doing the pattern in pattern class or if we had to use pre-made blocks. And it was just so slow and making me really agitated. Like I didn't need to be there. I think 2 people out of the whole class of 15 managed to cut those out. So when we go back next week, that's going to be super efficient, right? When we start cutting out all our fabric pieces. So pattern making today. We did a bunch of variations on different types of sleeves. So we used our fitted bodice block to make a shorter sleeve. And then looked at variations of just like a rolled cuff, one with a tuck on it, a puff/gathered sleeve. And the other thing was that we brought in our fabric we're going to make the pajama shirts out of. These pajama shirts we've patterned. We did the trade drawing and design class. We're going to be sewing it in the construction class, so it's kind of like all the classes coming together for this pajama shirt. So laid out the fabric, cut it out. So it assumes that if your pattern was done correctly, then it's going to be cut out correctly, it's sewn correctly. So here's hoping the pattern was done correctly. So this blue fabric has like a faint brocade pattern on it. As usual, Friday is a shorter day, so not a huge amount to report, but got to prioritize the design assessment that wasn't fully completed. So it's rendering the design and finishing the tray drawing on it. I did everything else in class. Smashed it out in 2 hours, luckily. So we'll see. Otherwise, Friday means LARP day. If you've been on my streams, you would have seen our streaming schedule has changed. We're now streaming Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday day. Varying up some different games and some multiplayer stuff with some pals. So this was the plan for the sleeves. You start with a basic sleeve block, which is this red shape. This is from the fitted blouse block. And because we're making a short sleeve, we want to mark it, you know, cut it from where it is. So this is the elbow mark from the block. And we're gonna move it up to, like, you know, just based on the illustration, this seemed like a reasonable point, like halfway between the elbow and the armpit seam. Because we're cutting it, we also need to add in this fold shape so that it's going to come down, fold up, down again, and then have the hem seam allowance tucked in at the back. So this little zigzag diagram kind of shows how the pattern is going to go. So we do our maths and figure out now we want it to be 4 centimeters wide of a band, and because it's folding on the front and the back, we want to double that length. And we copy all this to paper and do like a mini one. And then after we learn how to do the mini one, we do it in full scale, right? You can't really see, like, on the side here how the hem folds, sort of, not really, but it folds like that. Similar thing for this one with a tuck, where if you had the sample piece, you'd be able to play with it to see, oh, is this folded over like the first one, or is it folded one way and then folded back and then top stitched? Yes, it's folded like that. So we do some different maths. So it kind of folds up and folds back and then has the seam allowance tucked in and top stitching over the top. So the seam allowance is a little bit less than the width so that it can fit in there and still get top stitched. And you demo. For a gathered sleeve, we need to add volume to the pattern so that we can pull it back in again. But we also need to adjust the bodice pattern as well, because if you just added this straight on, it would sit like too far off the edge of the shoulder, and because there's volume on there, the volume would kind of like flop off the edge of the shoulder because you've added that on, so it extends the shoulder length. So you need to cut back into the shoulder to like counteract that. So we need to adjust, cut back a bit. We only cut back like 1 centimeter because we're not making it super gathered, and we use the pivot blocking method to get like a nice curve on that point. On our pattern, we are going to extend this top bit and also the bottom bit because there's a little bit of curve, there's a little bit of volume at the bottom, so we're going to extend that there. Yeah, so the method was find how much you want to extend it by. In this case, we're going to add 6 centimeters on either side, square block out, redraw the curve, square block out, redraw the curve, and blend in the bottom edge as well. So we ended up with that pattern. Yeah, funky stuff. On another thing, on Friday in pattern making class, I've mentioned before that I get quite frustrated in this class because, like, I've got to reverse engineer everything that the teacher is doing, like using logic and stuff, and that gave me a huge amount of insight into like how to actually do pattern making and everything, like more efficiently, and you know, trying to logic my way through it instead of math my way through it. But there was this one thing where I just couldn't understand how to do it because I'm like, why is this step here? And I asked the teacher, like, while she was doing the demonstration, okay, like, what are these lines? Like, why have you drawn a line on the sleeve 5 centimeters on either side of the center when we know we're blocking it out 6 centimeters? Like, is it to have a nice curve? Or is it so you, like, thought initially it was like for seam allowance, but I'm like, we're not cutting the pattern. Why would you need seam allowance? And I was like, oh, is it for this? And she's like, no. I'm like, is it for this? No. And she wouldn't tell me what it was for. And I was like,
is it useless? Is it there for anything? And she's like, I guess it doesn't mean anything. Like, it wasn't even supposed to be a step for like, oh, if you understand this step, that means you'll understand the following steps. It's just, it didn't need to be there. It didn't need to have these lines marked on this block. Like, why were these lines here, Robin? Why? Like, I initially, I wrote them out as 5 centimeters because that's what she said. And I'm like, okay, where are we going with this? And then she's like, oh, we're going to block it out 6 centimeters. Here's our reference lines, you know, how much to block it out by. I'm like, what is this line? It's not even the line that we're going to stop during this curve at. We're stopping during the curve at the point we're going to gather from, which we already mathed out from the illustration. Why are these lines here? Anyway, that's me in pattern making. Yeah, sorry this video is a little bit all over the place. Going like, oh, we're doing a video every week, and then like having the mid-semester break, and I'm like, how did I do this before? How did I streamline this? Like, what was my system? I couldn't even record at school on my lunch break because it was like there was like nowhere I could go record that wasn't going to annoy a bunch of other people sitting around. I feel like I complain a lot. Like, I'm having a really good time at class. I don't know. Everyone has something to complain about, I guess. If I'm not complaining about this, I'd complain about work, I suppose. But work's pretty good now that I'm not there all the time. You know, like I said in the first video, I quit full time so I could do study. And now I have more to give to work. Like, I'm performing better at work now that I'm there less. But yeah, that's it for me this week. I don't actually have any more stuff to show physically because it was the first week back. So it's just kind of not a lot in my books right now. But there definitely will be some stuff next week. But yeah, we'll see you then. Bye bye.